Hello, everybody. This is David Blackmon with the Energy Impacts Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Stuart Turley, the man about town in Abilene, Texas, I believe, today.
You bet. How are you today?
I'm great. Stu has Energy News Beat and his own Substack as well. And with us today is Mike Umbro with Californians for Energy and Science. Are you the executive director of that? I've forgotten.
I am, yeah. Founded it in 2022. So we're going into our fourth year. So we're
you've had a lot of success too, haven't you?
It's been the market and policy is needing change, screaming for change, and people are really joining our group quickly, and we're trying to keep up with that demand to hold events and educate folks. So it's exciting.
Hey, I want to give your group
doing that, by the way. What, Stu? Sorry.
I want to give your group a shout out, by the way. George over there that you work with on that, and got to interview Steve Hilton. And George, Steve Hilton running for governor out there has a plan. That man is cool. And George, your compatriot over there, is absolutely phenomenal as well.
Yeah, they're great people. George Harmer. Harmer. He's a great person. Brother of mine, one of my best friends now. It's one of we didn't know each other before we started Californians for Energy and Science. And then he came to our second meeting and joined the board, and he's with General Production Service, one of the largest production service companies in the state, staying in business, employing 600 plus people, and just a great group over there. And he's a great individual. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And I'll tell you, I love Steve Hilton. Steve Hilton is a class act, and that man needs to be governor instead of the piece of hair gel that is now running California. I just made sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Steve, he doesn't hold back, and he has a vision, and he knows that California is the golden state for a reason. This was a land of tremendous opportunity, rich in natural resources. There's no reason we should have the highest utility rates, the highest gasoline prices, other than bad policy. And he's very effective at presenting that case.
Well, I guess the biggest blessing this year for the state of California is the fact that Gavin Newsom is termed out, so he can't run again. Which, thank God for that. And not just a blessing for the state, but for the whole country, really. Although now he's going to I guess he's going to run for president. So maybe
I was just thinking, be careful what you wish for.
But he's had, he's done a couple of things here recently. You talk about the need for change in policy there in California. And it's obvious a huge need. And wanted to get with you today, in part, to talk about that bill he signed recently that is going to open up drilling permits for a couple of thousand wells, or actually more than 1,000 a year, right? In Kern County alone, but only Kern County, right?
Only Kern County, and up to 2,000 or enough to stabilize in-state production at 25%, which we're dipping below as it is. And I think there's several misconceptions about this bill. It's a good thing. I don't want to say it's a bad thing. It's a good thing to unstick 2,000 permits a year. But when you look back historically in 2013 and 2014, when we were actually starting to increase production for the first time in several years, we had well stimulation treatments, hydraulic fracturing, which Lawrence Berkeley National Lab issued a 2015 study saying this is a whole bunch of good for the state of California and not much negative with our well stimulation treatments. You had high oil prices. And then on top of that, we were drilling about 3,500 to 4,000 wells a year. So there's an important distinction that people outside the industry or even inside the industry need to understand. Permits are one thing. Drilled and completed wells are entirely different. And that's really the metric that we focus on. We need to be drilling and completing 3,500 wells a year minimum to stabilize where we're at with this production collapse. And so it's really it's a good thing that, developers like us, we will benefit from that. We are in Kern County. We are not in a health protection zone. We are in the established oil field, and we're bringing a new technology, geologic thermal energy. So getting us the ability to permit the wells is one thing. The other thing that we need desperately, and I speak a lot to the folks in Washington, D.C. about this, is we need aquifer exemptions and underground injection control applications to be processed. And that allows us to re-inject brackish water back into the reservoir we've produced from. Very simple. If we were in Texas, this would take days, maybe a week. In California, we've been working on our aquifer exemption in UIC for 7 years almost, and it's so just this permit SB 237 is not enough. Just unlocking that is not enough.
Mike, let me throw this ugly baby on your doorstep. Not that you don't need another ugly baby on your doorstep, but the pipeline, the artery. We have two topics that I want to bring up. The refineries, including the Chevron fire and devastation that just happened, plus the other refineries that are closing. But let's talk about the pipeline first.
Okay.
The pipeline is at almost critical level because the heavy California oil has to be heated and then transported. And if it goes below a certain point, you lose that pipeline, and physics matter to the grid, and physics matter to oil transportation in that pipeline. You're not going to get Kern County oil to the refineries if that pipeline goes down. And I went to Oklahoma State, and I'm having a hard time with my crayon. Yeah. The math ain't mathing up. Even if you got 1,000 wells, the amount of oil does not add up to keeping that pipeline open. I'm a little negative on that number that it's trying there. Can you give me some insight there?
Yeah. Speaking of negative, Crimson, the operator, is losing $2 million a month on that pipeline. So they're losing a massive amount of money every month because these volumes are so low. And this is where the math is not mathing, where you have Sable Offshore that can literally unleash 40 to 50,000 barrels a day offshore in federal waters near Santa Barbara. And so on the one hand, Sacramento's saying, well, we need to stabilize the refineries. We need to stabilize the pipeline. We need to give Kern County 2,000 permits a year, which isn't enough. But you've got this amazing resource, world-class resource sitting there, and they're fighting tooth and nail to get that pipeline online and to get those three platforms online. And they can produce and increase production faster than any other operator in the state. There's no other operator that can bring 40 to 50,000 barrels a day on within months and stabilize that, because ultimately the pipelines are entering Santa Barbara, and then that feeds the main artery up and down the state of California. So we need all that production coming online. Not to mention the jobs it creates, the economic impact it creates. And I believe we will get it online, but it's just one of those goofy scenarios where you have 87-year-old Jane Fonda running a $3 million ad campaign to block all of this. And why are we listening to this? It's just absurd. And we need to be listening to the experts, the industry experts, if we really want to stabilize this situation.
Before I hog the podcast today, David, and I apologize. When you also, I believe I either heard you or some other great Californian mention that it is scientifically real science that the oozing of the oil offshore benefits from oil drilling, and it has less methane going out. So it actually helps the economy, the ecological, to drill it. Did I hear that correctly?
100% correct. Yes, the Chumash were the first to discover oil thousands of years ago in this region by way of oil seeps. And these oil seeps, according to NOAA, seep more than 5 million gallons a year into the water. And that's
Wow.
orders of magnitude more than what ruptured on that beach in Refugio State Beach back in 2015 when the pipeline had a rupture. But of course, you're seeing increased seepage as you shut these wells in. The reservoir pressure increases. I think it's a misnomer to also suggest that these oil reservoirs are depleted. They're not. They're recharging. As Sable turned on those first 6 wells, they got hit with flush production of 6,000 barrels a day on 6 or 7 wells. I mean, just phenomenal production when they just put that one platform back online and that handful of wells back online. And so what would the environmental activists rather have? More tar balls and more seepage coming up on the beaches, as well as more tanker traffic ruining the marine ecosystem, spewing unabated pollution into the air? Or would you rather have Sable Offshore producing these reservoirs, creating jobs, reducing the tar seeps? And this is coming out of UC Berkeley, Professor Jamie Rector, who really, is a friend of Californians for Energy and Science. We had him on our California Insider panel, and he's explaining, not only the oil seeps, but the methane emissions from seeps in the LA basin. There's a tremendous amount of methane seeping into the air, the Brea tar pits, and as well as old oil wells that were not abandoned properly. So again, you want to be producing these with modern technology to reduce that seepage. San Diego, where I'm located, in 2015. I mean, there's active oil and gas seeps up and down this state because there's a lot of resource up and down this state.
They've got one up in D.C., and I believe his name is Nadler. It's a big oil sleep up there. When we're talking about I didn't pull his finger, I swear. But when we sit back and take a look at some of the things going on, the refinery capacity, has the war on oil and gas in California gone so far that it's a national security risk when we have Chevron's El Segundo, and it goes out. It's 40% of the jet fuel for Southern Cal. It's all this other stuff. When is it coming back online, and if? But has Gavin Newsom absolutely eviscerated the other 20% that's coming offline? Like Valero saying, we're done.
Yeah,
it's gone too far.
It's about to get really bad. So El Segundo, what I understand,
it's about to get really bad.
Yeah.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah, it is. It is. We have to explain this to the layperson. So it's about the crisis is here. So I understand what I've read. El Segundo, Chevron, it was an explosion in the jet fuel portion of the refinery, and they're still able, I think, to make gasoline and diesel. So it will cause an increase, but it goes to speak, the Monterey battery fire, the lithium battery fire that PG&E operates in Monterey, that's going to be offline through June of 2026. So there's trade-offs with any kind of energy, as we all talk about. But the fact that there was nobody injured at this refinery explosion, and they're still able to produce some of their product, and they're getting it back online as quickly as possible, speaks to the resiliency of what we're talking about. You can actually put out a refinery fire. You can't put out a lithium battery fire. You just let the whole place burn down, and then you try to rebuild it. On Benicia and Valero leaving, they're the sole provider of jet fuel to Travis Air Force Base in Northern California. So now we're saying, okay, Benicia, you're going to go out, and now we're going to be importing that jet fuel into Travis Air Force Base. And Phillips 66 accepted their last crude tanker shipment in Torrance at their refinery on September 30. So that's the likely convert to an import terminal. So that foreign supply chain risk is real. These communities that are being told, oh, we're going to shut down the refineries. Well, what do you get instead? You get a massive tank farm. That ain't the best thing either. So you just get more ships and unabated pollution because the refiners pay into cap and trade. They off speed rail to nowhere with that money, and so it's a whole scheme that is collapsing in front of our
and the oil, that's coming in on those tankers is produced in places with much more lax emission standards and other environmental protections than we have in the United States.
Iraq,
and emissions, global emissions, is disastrous. And that, again, it's Jane Fonda. We'll never talk about that. She probably doesn't know it. Right?
And what people don't understand is Iraq just shipped a tanker to California from their new pipeline. It is on the way. I mean, that pipeline in Iraq had been shut down for years, and then a Russian crude went to India, and then it went and got turned into gasoline. Gavin Newsom, holy smokes!
Well, yeah, it's this whole issue of not looking at sources and uses. Where does it come from? We're not tracking emissions from these other places. The indigenous leaders of the Amazon came up to Sacramento pleading for California to stop buying their crude because we import about 50% of all of Ecuador's oil production, and that's controlled by China.
I was going, and who's doing the production? China.
Right.
and who's heavily invested in Iraq is Russia, China, Iran, those three countries. So is Iraq going to stop producing because we stopped buying 70 million barrels a year? No, but we should be making those 70 million barrels a year with Sable Offshore, Kern County, Ventura, Santa Maria, Los Angeles Basin. We can easily get those fields back online. We have per acre more oil reservoir productivity than Saudi Arabia and Iraq. We have great rock here. Everybody talks about this in the industry. Yes. We have the best rock and the worst policy.
Yeah, and the production in Kern County, of course, is coming from, well, I mean, most of it's the heavy crude that has to be heated to get into the pipeline and, from those kinds of recovery efforts. But there's also, I mean, the formation is more of a conventional formation, right? It's not the shale. Mm-hmm. That's the source rock for that formation. What is it? The Klein shale that's in California?
We have the Monterey shale.
Monterey shale, excuse me. Klein's in Texas. And so, the resource estimate on that shale are in the billions and billions of barrels, but of course it's never really been accessed because of the regulatory environment in California. So people have very little understanding of the magnitude of the resource that's available in California.
And this is what gives me so much hope with the Energy Dominance Council, Secretary Burgum, Secretary Wright, Secretary Zeldin. Secretary Wright came out of California. He's now overseeing all of our national laboratories. And I think once they get their arms around the entire national picture, they can zero in and say, hey, let's highlight this science that came out of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab in 2015. Said our well stimulation treatments use less water than other areas of the country. They reduce the carbon intensity of our barrel of oil. They do not expand the physical footprint of the oil fields, so you're not going to see more expansion in the LA basin, and a whole host of other benefits, along with the fact that in 2020 to 2022, Governor Newsom commissioned Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory to then approve well stimulation permits. They approved nearly 100, and then he said, wait a minute, the scientists are not doing what I want them to do. So I'm going to sign an executive courage. They were talking about codifying that in SB 237, and it did not make that piece of legislation, thankfully. But I think Secretary Wright could absolutely do us a huge favor in just calling out the fact that we have two national labs that support well stimulation in California. So policymakers need to pay attention to the science that they always seem to verbally, spew that they support science. Well, back it up with your act.
Yeah. Katie Porter is apparently a former member of Congress, apparently the favorite to win that election. At least the primary.
Did you say Katie Perry?
Katie Porter, who is, I believe, the female version of Governor Pritzker in Illinois. She's viral this morning for a segment she was recording with a CBS reporter, yesterday who dared to ask her follow-up questions.
Right.
It's going pretty viral today. Is Katie Porter's with her energy policies? Has she even talked about it first? And if so, would they be any different than Gavin Newsom's?
I'm not sure what her energy policies are, because I think she just blew herself right out of that race. I think, not being able to have the temptation of all these candidates.
Yeah.
Good luck dealing with $10 gasoline and rolling blackouts in 2028, which we will have. We will have $10 gasoline and rolling blackouts when we host the Olympics. I'm almost certain. And so whoever's leading the state of California, for her not to be able to conduct an interview, I think about myself just when I'm going and pitching investors on our project. I mean, you're asked every question imaginable. What's the efficiency of your technology? When are you breaking even? How does it work? All, the list goes on and on and on. Imagine saying, well, we're done here. Yeah, but then expecting to have the positive result, expecting to get an investor from that kind of a meeting. It's not professional. And it's typical of some of the Democrats in Sacramento and how they behave. Now, I will say, there are Democrats in Sacramento. Henry Stern is one of these Democrats, where he said, I've seen the light. I've seen that we need to unleash Kern County. And he's an environmental lawyer. And so I think when you have work with both sides, but both sides have to have that critical thought and the temperament to have these conversations.
So we've all seen old photographs of the big Chevron operation in Los Angeles, way back in the 40s and 50s, all the hundreds of derricks standing, in that part of it. There's got to be other resources besides Kern County in California. I just wonder, are those resources all depleted and no longer worth accessing, or are they just off limits because of regulatory restrictions?
It's really off limits because of regulatory restrictions. Yeah. Inglewood oil field is a prime example of this. Prolific oil field that is being shut down because if you don't produce more than 15 barrels of oil a day per well, they're calling that a well that needs to be shut down. It's a danger to the community. But the amount of air monitoring that's going on in that field is tremendous, and the public just doesn't know about this. Again, Jane Fonda and Governor Newsom together had a press conference in this oil field saying we need to shut this oil field down. And what they'll do is they'll plug the wells and then they'll build houses on top of it. And I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't want to live on top of an oil field just by sheer virtue of the fact that there are natural seeps occurring in this whole area. This is a very active place tectonically. You have a lot of earthquakes and faults, a massive fault that runs right through the middle of that field. And Professor Rector at UC Berkeley, again, is studying this very topic. As we shut in these oil fields, one, there's the increased seepage that we see, but two, are you going to have increased seismic risk? Because as you pressure up those reservoirs, producing those reservoirs on a fault block reduces the pressure. Right. So when you don't produce those, are you going to see more seismic activity? I think it's a great scientific hypothesis to investigate.
Oh, absolutely. And Jed Clement was filmed in California shooting the ground, and oil came up out of the ground. I mean, this is a scientific thing.
That was back in Tennessee where he shot the
No, but they filmed it in California, dude.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Well, Beverly Hills still has a tremendous amount of oil, and sadly, I don't know that the LA basin ever has an opportunity to really drill and get after it again. But there are operators that are responsibly drilling from centralized pads, drilling, obviously we can drill directionally. We can hit a target 2-3 miles away and through subsurface drilling and hit that target safely and then produce it back to a central facility that is already has an existing footprint. And so those are the types of common sense approaches that I would take, of just saying, hey, if the operator's operating responsibly and supporting the community with tax revenue, why not produce it?
Well, maybe in future generations, you might be able to get that done, right? Go ahead, Stu. I'm sorry.
Oh no! As we sit here and we take a look at what's going on, does Steve Hilton have an opportunity if the voting machines are thrown into the bay and we get rid of mail-in ballots before the election, or does Steve Hilton, is he out? And I mean, how is this shaping up?
It's funny because my wife's mail-in ballot came in the mail yesterday for Prop 50, which is Sacramento's gerrymandering bill in response to Texas gerrymandering bill. So let's gerrymander so that we can save this country from gerrymandering. So I think that will be your indicator, Stu. If it passes, it's probably not looking good for Steve Hilton. If everybody rejects this bill, I think then that's your signal that the people of California are waking up. But again, you see a flood of ads, and there's so much. This is what we have to get away from as a country, of saying, getting on these two sides, these polar opposites. And we do it with energy. And I think that's what Secretary Burgum and Wright and Zeldin are trying to advocate for, all of the above, opening up the mining road in Alaska yesterday. Amazing. Yep. Bringing pipeline infrastructures, the ability to permit pipelines. Amazing. So I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, and the jury's out on, can Steve win? But he posted on X today that he's up in the polls. I mean, I don't really follow the polls, but he posted something that showed he was up.
Isn't that great? I sure hope he does. He is one cool cat. Mm-hmm. I saw a picture of you and Doug Burgum. Did you get the chance to have fun with him?
What an amazing man. I got the chance to speak to him. Of course, when you're in a group setting, they have a lot of people they need to talk to. And I had a chance to tell him about our project. I had a chance to thank him personally for canceling the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, had a memorandum of understanding with CalGEM, our state agency, that gave CalGEM primacy on permitting on federal lands. Right. And under Secretary Burgum, that was revoked. So I was able to thank him personally for doing that. And I was able to tell him that, we're blessed to have him. And I was at an event it was a 2-day event for the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, a $450 million library they're building in the Badlands, just in the town of Medora, North Dakota. Nice. Huge, amazing project. Yeah. And he was there, listening to him address. There was a small dinner we were at with maybe just 30 people, but listening to him speak about Theodore Roosevelt. And most people don't know this. Theodore Roosevelt saved the NFL because they had 18 deaths in 1 year while he was president, and he really pushed for safety measures so that they didn't shut down the NFL. And so he's an amazing sportsman. I learned so much about President Roosevelt just listening to these stories about him, daring greatly, his conservation. He's the only president or the only individual with a national park named after him. He's a great conservationist, but not only that, he advocated for developing resources in these areas for the benefit of the people. So it wasn't just shut it in the ground. It was a very balanced approach to resource development, to ranching, to conservation. The man lost his father. He lost his father at a young age, I believe when he was at Harvard. And then on the same day, his mom and his wife died. And so he went out from the East Coast, and that's how he landed in Medora. Just an amazing story. And then we all are familiar with his, man in the arena speech. And I think it's just, that's exactly what I see in Secretary Burgum, Zeldin, Wright, President Trump. These men are in the arena trying to benefit all people, not just some people. They're trying to bring affordable, reliable, abundant energy to all of us. And we all need to join them in that effort. And so I was just very blessed to have that experience. My brother, Dan Wright, my fraternity brother from Pepperdine, is building an AI company called Armada AI. They're doing containerized solutions on the edge where you have stranded gas and really remote areas. Really awesome technology. People should check out Armada AI. But he invited me to this event. And I said, oh, of course. Yeah, I'll come. why would I not want to meet Secretary Burgum? But you know, I've met a lot of politicians lately, and he, after one meeting with me, he remembered my name that night. I mean, the guy,
Wow.
just that personality, just that personal touch. And maybe he looked at my place card on the dinner table. I don't know. But the fact that he remembered, you know, he meets thousands of people a week. And just his level of care is, and his level of servant leadership. He has money. He doesn't need to be doing this. He's set. Yeah. And he obviously just cares. And it's great to have that kind of leadership.
You know, leadership is incredibly important. I did just interview General Flynn, and he's putting together an energy summit in DC. So I'm going to do an intro letter to you and his staff to help get you in there, because you're critical for this, because the Californians for Energy and Science is critical from the standpoint that California is the #1 economy in the United States, and it is being tubed and has become a national security risk because of hair gel. I mean, Gavin Newsom. I mean, it is absolutely a mess. And here's a comment from CJA. If we start using Newsom's hair gel as a fuel, would that solve California's fuel crisis? No, because it would go up like a drone strike on a refinery, and it would absolutely combust and be bad. So I don't know that would be a good solution. Pretty funny comment, but
I do think that President Trump is looking into what's causing this with the energy emergency declaration and the executive order, signaling and calling out specifically the bad policies in the Northeast and the West. But the root of this is, Newsom is obviously the man in charge, but the root of this is the Sierra Club, is Jane Fonda, is these activists that control how the whole apparatus in Sacramento votes. And when we implement a law, you're seeing this roll into Colorado and New Mexico. So this whole idea that we do need to fix this in California, we can't just all say, oh, crazy Californians, leave those people alone. They don't know what they're voting for. They're mailing in ballots. Everybody and their, brother from Ecuador gets to vote in our elections. Well, I don't know, but we need to clean it up, and we need to signal that we shouldn't be giving money to these activist organizations that are largely funded by state actors like Russia, like China. They're getting dark money from places that you cannot trace, and they should not have their tax exempt status. I'm sorry, but it needs to be revoked, and the money spigot needs to be turned off. And we saw this with Greenpeace in North Dakota getting hit with that $600 million fine, settlement, whatever it was. But there needs to be a total chilling of the activist community. We don't have time for this. We need to build affordable, reliable energy while protecting the environment. And again, President Roosevelt taught us we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can conserve the environment and develop our resources at the same time. And that's what the Energy Dominance Council is doing.
I think I call the Energy Dominance Council, I actually call Chris Wright, Lee Zeldin, and Doug Burgum the three horsemen of the energy dominance apocalypse, is what I call them. And I truly believe that they are. And I want to give Christopher Messina, who wrote the federal budget, the Messina federal budget, a shout out. I didn't recognize his new picture on X when he was making that comment, but we need to follow the Christopher Messina's budget. If we did that, we would not have any problems. But
all the budget problems would be over if they did that. But you can't get Congress to agree to anything. I was having a email exchange with my editor at the Daily Caller this morning about the fact that, all these executive orders and all these things the Trump administration is doing are great. They're wonderful. But if the next election goes the wrong way, then it's all going to get immediately reversed by the incoming Democratic president. Mm-hmm. So Congress really needs to act, not just to memorialize what's going on in those executive orders into law, but also to address the 501 section of the IRS code, which is what enables all those nonprofits you were just talking about to exist. It needs to be repealed. Section 501C of the IRS code needs to be repealed and put all of those groups completely out of business immediately, because that's what Doge showed us. That sector of our economy is just a big money laundering operation, and a lot of it's been funded by the taxpayers, and it needs to come to a swift
Let me
halt.
ask this. If the IRS, if President Trump, we bought more gold, we're bringing in more gold, and we end the Fed and end the IRS, does that automatically go away? Because that could be one of the big wins.
Well, you've got to repeal the laws. I mean, those laws would still exist on the books, and as long as these groups like the one Stacey Abrams was trying to get $2 billion out of the Energy Department for, are able to just send in $100 for a filing fee and become a tax exempt organization that claims it's going to cut emissions in certain underprivileged communities around the country. Literally, they were about to get $2 billion of taxpayer money for an organization that didn't really even exist other than in $100 filing document. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think if you don't fully repeal it, I think there also are ways to cap the donations per
whatever.
cap what a certain group can. It's got to be reformed. Cap what someone can do. Maybe all of the money they receive has to be from and traceable from the United States, so we don't have these foreign countries funding the anti-fracking campaigns and all these other campaigns. Yeah, I think there needs to be a whole lot more transparency, and that's what we do at Californians for Energy and Science. We don't really, we're mainly self-funded. B, we go on campus and we're talking to students, and C, we're not really raising money from big money at all. I think the largest check we've ever received is $25,000. I mean, that's really not that much money. And so, but we're fine. We're gaining momentum through word of mouth, through the teachings that we offer. And that's the way it should be. It should be grassroots. Right. These nonprofits should not be controlling everything. And thank God also that they paused the Inflation Reduction Act. And I was directly impacted by that. We had a $6 million award through President Biden's administration, awarded under Biden. We, according to the DOE, were one of five that were approved under President Trump, because there was so much grift in the system on those IRA. This is what I am hypothesizing now. No one told me this, but
it's absolutely right.
I wrote our grant. I wrote our budget. I had zero DEI in our grant. I had zero money allocated to anything other than our project and the labs we're partnered with. It was all for the betterment of the people of the United States. We are trying to bring a new technology, which is what a grant is for. This is a first of a kind technology, and then we're done. We don't need money in perpetuity to make these technologies exist, like wind, solar, lithium batteries. And Secretary Wright is very vocal about talking about why our grid is so unstable. And it's the result of these renewables. And then when you post on that on X, there's so many pundits that even energy developers in Texas and folks that are now grifting, and they started to grift into that business model, and they're pissed off because it got yanked out from under them. And it's rightfully so. I was actually glad when our grant got paused. I said, you know what? They're going to look at what we did and how we applied, and they're going to approve us because we're making geothermal power and we're making the lowest carbon oil in the world, and it's never been done before. That is the criteria of what a grant should be, to get a technology proven for the first time and then let it fly with free market economics. And
you're also being transparent about what you do, right? You're not some dark money group with a secret organization and secret sources of funds coming in. I mean, it's a whole different kind of thing than what we saw out of the Doge revelations from the USAID budget, for example.
Yeah, it was the IRA was set up to be a giveaway to China. Make all these wind turbines, make all these lithium packs, bring it here. And the administration, this is a great signal from Alaska's big news yesterday. They want mining. They want, renewable power. They just want it to be made with US product. They don't want to make it with China product, which is exactly right. That's exactly what should happen.
The grid problem that we also face is because of the China electronics that are made, and I see some huge problems because there are 492 major grid interconnects that were made in China that have been put back into the grid. I cannot confirm that they've been pulled out. There, several of them got connected to and can be remotely shut down. So, and then we have all of the other technology that China has been putting into solar farms and wind turbines that they can remotely control and remotely shut down. This is a technological problem. We need to be building our own things. And I love the Ambler Road up there that they just did yesterday, and you got that thing rolling because Alaskans need all the money they can get.
Absolutely. And then we need to manufacture those panels and those batteries here, not in China. And furthermore, the Chinese flooded the market with cheap photovoltaics. And I see this on X too. Well, why California, is deploying all this solar, but so is Nevada and Arizona, and their utility prices aren't going up. So it can't be the solar. Wrong. We have too much solar in California, so much so that Californians subsidize Nevada and Arizona because we shed our excess solar photovoltaic power to those states when we need to curtail because our grid is so fragile and unstable as a result of all of these renewables coming online. And this is, again, where energy professionals that are not grifting into this market need to be vocal and explain how this works, because I've been on X with people about the ERCOT grid, and they say, oh, well, we're turning off our crypto mining when the demand increases, and so that stabilizes the grid. It's like, well, yeah, but you're not paying for any of the system upgrades, and
Right.
who gets any benefit from the coins that you're making for yourself? Why don't you just pay peak rates and off peak rates? And if you can survive that way, you can survive that way. What's setting up in ERCOT is another Enron, in my opinion. It's trading phantom megawatts and in the name of grid stability. But what's going to happen? It's going to be those dark winter days where you don't have a lot of sunlight, you don't have the amount of hours to charge the batteries. What's saving ERCOT right now is the all of the above energy strategy. You allow natural gas. So it's,
Sure.
but Texas has a duck curve now, just like California. And so at a certain point, that reality will hit.
Right. But it's no accident. People don't understand that the California system and the Texas system are both Kinley Enron systems.
Right.
The basics of both of those systems were designed by Enron, lobbied by Enron. Kinley was one of George W. Bush's best friend. George W. Bush was the governor who signed the bills to remodel the Texas system on the Enron model. So these outcomes, we're just 5-10 years behind California and all the stupidity, right?
Right.
The biggest difference is it's all been done by Democrats in California. It's all been done by Republicans in Texas, but it's the same system.
It is. That's well said. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why he gets paid the medium bucks.
Well, I think it again kind of goes back to that conversation around we need to be talking about all of this and not just forget California, or we're Texas and we're great, so we don't need to worry. Everybody should just adopt our model. And I think that's where the Energy Dominance Council again is signaling we need all sources. We need domestic sources. We need to stabilize the grid. We need to build more generation. You need to build more power generation. It's not enough just to turn off computers. You have to turn on turbines to stabilize the grid.
May I make a comment to that? We do not need, I used to say we need all energy forms. Doing the math again, my OSU math and my fingers, I ran out of fingers. We cannot add any more wind turbines or solar farms because there is zero land reclamation for those things, and they don't last 3 years. They don't last 8 years. 8 years is when they become fiscally totally irrelevant and a collapse. 3 years, they start doing the nameplate, and then they use the Inflation Reduction Act to say we're doing an upgrade when that machine needs to be done in 3 years. 8 years, they go to the ratepayers and start going, hey, we got a rate. It's an 8-year total collapse on a wind farm. Guess what? We have 79,000 wind turbines in the United States. I want to throw a question out. How many have land reclamation? Zero. $89 billion to barely scrape the surface on these things is a liability just on the wind farm, not including what we're doing to the horrific problems of the solar panels that we ship to other countries and then they throw in the ocean. This is terrible.
You got to own it cradle to grave, just like oil and gas operators. You own that well cradle to grave until you abandon it, and you might have to go back and re-abandon it. But there are also stories, you don't see this talked about in the mainstream media, but landfills in California that are having fires because the lithium, even small lithium batteries, get tossed in the landfill. You can't put those out. And so these are major, these waste products need to go to special waste handling facilities to be treated with. And that none of that makes it into the levelized cost of electricity that Lazard puts out. And again, Secretary Wright called that one out in an interview. So he's not beholden to the investment banks that are trying to finance these schemes. It's amazing to see.
Well, Mike, how do people reach out to you?
We're on LinkedIn. I got to get cranking more on other social medias for Californians for Energy and Science, but we're picking up. We're about to cross 3,000 followers on LinkedIn. We're getting a lot of followers in other states, New York, in other areas like Washington, D.C. And so the more that we publish, content like this with you, hopefully you snip out some short ones for us to post, and we'll get those on there. That'll help all of us. And then energyandscience.com. I couldn't believe the URL was available when I picked it up, but energyandscience.com is ours. And I'll be in the coming months, weeks, I'll be at Geothermal Rising in a couple weeks. I'll be at Harvard in a couple weeks. I'll be at Berkeley in a couple weeks. I'll be back in Washington, D.C. in December. So we're just one trip at a time, one conversation at a time. Follow us, and we don't spam. You can sign up on our website. I send maybe like an email every other month. So you're not going to just get spammed with our content either.
David, how do people find you?
Well, they don't find me at Harvard and Berkeley, I can tell you that. You can find me at blackmon.substack.com. Everything I write or record like this ends up being reproduced there.
And for me, I'm Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. You can find me on energynewsbeat.com and or theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. And I'll tell you what, this has been a lot of fun, guys, and I do appreciate you guys. If we can get that General Flynn Energy Summit rolling and some other trips to D.C., we'll be having some serious fun.
Count me in. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for continuing to shine a light on California. We really appreciate it. We need it.
Thank you for doing it with us. Appreciate you.
We appreciate you. And I'll tell you what, Gavin Newsom is such a scoundrel, but he is doing me a lot of favors. My website, I range between 100 and 200,000 people a day on the site, and most of them are in New York or California, and they're all sitting there going, we live in a really bad place. So taxes, if you got taxes, that's a problem. So
yeah. And you're good with very provocative headlines. So
he is, yeah.
But Doomberg said the same thing, that most of their subscribers are in California. People want answers to this, and same at these college campuses, Berkeley, Harvard. They want to know the truth. We've got to go to those places and re-educate these students.
It's amazing. And again, thank you to everybody and appreciate it. And Christopher Messina, I want to give you a shout out and have a great day, guys. We'll see you all soon.
Appreciate it.